Rain whispered over the field of the Trident like some sorrow-drenched lullaby, soft enough to let dying men hear their own hearts falter, loud enough to hide the hush of departing souls. Rhaegar Targaryen stood alone in the shallow water, cool currents licking the blood from his greaves, rubies rattling in the reeds like scattered stars. The river's surface still trembled with the memory of war, shards of broken spears bobbing beside battered helms, while a faint blue fog clung to the carcasses of horses, turning the slain into half-seen myths beneath the drizzle. He should have felt triumph. Instead, there was only a hush, the hush that follows when an orchestra's last note hangs, and everyone knows the song can never be played so flawlessly again. Robert Baratheon, the man who had sworn eternal love to Lyanna Stark and then lifted the banners of rebellion, now lay 30 paces upriver, lashed by silver chains to a debridged cartwheel. A maester knelt beside Robert, pressing linen into the split flesh over the usurper's brow, yet the wound gaped defiantly, red and wide, as though signaling its own refusal to close. Rhaegar knew the wound well. The final hammer blow that had cracked Robert's polished breastplate like an egg and toppled him from his stallion. The prince touched the dent in his own armor, where Robert's hammer had kissed the gilded scales. Another inch of fortune's whim, and it might have been Rhaegar who bled on cold iron. Still, victory felt hollow, like a harp string plucked in an empty hall. A ripple of water, a flutter of cloaks. Sir Arthur Dayne approached, his pale hair plastered dark against his temples, dawn sheathed and streaked with river mud. "Your Grace," Arthur said, voice low, though no one else dared near. The men await word. Rhaegar followed the knight's gaze upriver. A ragged, half-circle of banners drooped in the rain. The three-headed dragon of House Targaryen at their front, black fire unsheathed and thrust into the soil, crimson enamel washing downstream. Behind it fluttered the sun-hunt spear of Dornish houses, the silver towers of Hightower, the crescent stag of Renly's fledgling hosts. No, not Renly's anymore. The stag's field was slashed, its golden antlers bent. The arms of House Baratheon had been trampled into the mud, along with its lord. "Tell them the realm has peace again," Rhaegar answered at last, tasting ash on the word peace. "Then send my brother to Storm's End with a full column. The garrison will yield now that Robert lies broken." Arthur inclined his head. "And Lord Robert?" "Alive," Rhaegar said. "Fed, tended, and publicly named for the thing he is." "Oathbreaker," Arthur murmured, as though savoring the title. Then, with softer wonder, "The realm will remember that name." Rhaegar doubted it would forget soon. Robert the Oathbreaker, Oathbreaker of Storm's End, they would call him in songs. A cautionary melody for every lordling who fancied himself wronged by crown or council. Yet Rhaegar also saw the pity in Arthur's eyes. Even the finest swordsman understood the arrogance of victory. Any blade could be cracked, any oath disgraced. A different gust of wind, and it might have been Rhaegar lashed to a cartwheel, branded Oathbreaker for wedding another while his first wife still breathed. The thought of Elia cut through him like winter steel. She waited in King's Landing with their children, Rhaenys, playful as summer wind, and baby Aegon, whose purple eyes mirrored the prince's own. They had heard no doubt of Lyanna Stark, the wolf-maid harbored at the Tower of Joy, carrying the child that had ignited rebellion. They had heard gossip, half-truths, venom dressed as song. Rhaegar wondered what words awaited him at the Red Keep. What wounds of silence. He sank to one knee and scooped a palm of river water, watching it leak crimson between his fingers. Victory's price. When he rose, rain spattered his cloak in a fresh chorus. "See to it, Arthur," he said, "and send ravens to every corner of the realm. Storm's End has fallen in spirit. Robert Baratheon stands in chains, and the war is over." Arthur departed, cloak billowing like a broken sail. Rhaegar took 3 steps toward Robert, boots sucking at the mire, before the Lord of Storm's End found words. "Dragon Prince," Robert croaked, voice raw as old leather but still grand enough to summon a hush. Blood darkened his beard, matted to his cheeks. "Strike me down or unbind me, but do not leave me like some trusted boar to rot beside your river." "Memsem." Rhaegar studied him. The rebel's wrists were laced to the cartwheel spokes. His hammer lay yards away, half submerged. Even chained, Robert looked carved from oak, shoulders thick enough to bear a castle's weight. Moon-pale eyes fixed on Rhaegar, bright with hatred. Or was that grief? Perhaps both. "You swore fealty to the crown at Jon Arryn's side," Rhaegar said, water dripping from his hair. "You vowed to protect the realm. Then you raised banners against it." Robert bared his teeth. "I raised banners to rescue Lyanna. Your oath to her was sworn on a lie." "Nashorn. Ate the trident you could have yielded," Rhaegar continued, voice steady. "You could have called for parley. You could have taken the knee, pledged your sword, protected your people. Yet you fought on, though defeat was plain." "I fought for love," Robert spat. "And now love's price is defeat," said Rhaegar. Robert's laughter was a broken thing. "Defeat, aye. But know this, dragon. Love is never defeated. Not while one heart still remembers." He coughed, chains rattling. "You will see, Targaryen. My name will outlive these bonds." "Inheru. Your name will pass into caution," Rhaegar replied, though he felt no triumph. "Spare me your prophecies. I will not have your head, Robert. Your life shall serve a different justice. You broke oaths. Oaths to your liege, to your betrothed's father, to every sworn brother who bled, while you chased a stolen dream. The realm will see those chains as truth made iron." Robert's gaze slid beyond Rhaegar, toward the slope where small folk tended pyres. 100 tents dotted the rising bank, bright as transient flowers among rain-dark grass. "Chains rust," he said quietly. "Dreams do not." Rhaegar said nothing more. He nodded to 2 gold cloaks waiting in the shallows, and they dragged Robert across the water, splashing, cursing, toward a waiting cage cart. The river seized Robert's ruby-dappled blood and carried it into endless currents, away from crowns and oaths and the memories of men. The royal procession left the Trident at dawn 2 days later, following the king's road south under a sky vermilion as spilled wine. The prisoner's wagon creaked between ranks of outriders, its iron bars cloaked in wet canvas. Every village they passed paused morning chores to gape, small children lifted by fathers' arms, maids lingering at fences, one old septon dropping to his knees in prayer. Word traveled faster than hoofbeats. "Oathbreaker," some whispered. "Traitor stag," others said. But a few, barmaids with tears at their chins, a gang of mill boys raising wooden clubs in salute, cried only, "Robert," and bowed their heads when no one answered. Rhaegar rode at the vanguard but often felt the weight of those calls tugging at his cloak like unseen hands. Each time he found Arthur Dayne's steady presence beside him, quiet as moonlight on steel. Behind rode Barristan the Bold, visor down, bearing more scars than most men gathered in the caravan, but less doubt. They crossed Maidenpool on the 3rd day. The harbor choked with tar smoke from forgotten shipyards. Lady Mooten, red-eyed, hosted a weary feast beneath half-toppled banners. Rhaegar's dragon above the hearth, Baratheon's stag thrust down behind barrels of summer wine. The prince spoke little among the roasted ducks and leeks, though lords clamored to toast the crown. Rumors buzzed. That Eddard Stark marched south with the North's full levy, that Jon Arryn sued for peace at Gulltown, that Tywin Lannister had closed the gates of Casterly Rock waiting to see which banners came out of the rain. Rhaegar accepted each rumor with the same curt nod, but when alone in his Lent chamber, he opened parchment and quill and began letters. One to his father, still king in his red stronghold. One to his mother in exile at Dragonstone. One to his mother in exile at Dragonstone. One to Elia, where words failed, ink blotting under a tremor he could not honored in Dorne's desert tower. That letter he did not seal. At sunrise he burned it in a bronze brazier, watching smoke coil like a grieving serpent out the window. Their 6th night on the road they camped near the ruins of a first men holdfast, stones black as dried blood. Barristan hobbled through the mud to Rhaegar's pavilion with news. Storm's End's garrison refused entry to Viserys' column, insisted they still held true to the rightful Lord of Storm's End. 20 knights had ridden out under parley, demanding proof Robert lived. Viserys offered a severed stag banner and the mace of Felwood's captain. They spat in his direction and rode back behind the gatehouse. Worse, a fleet under Lord Stannis had slipped anchor 3 nights past, bound God's canoe-ware, perhaps for Tarth or Pike. Rhaegar listened, forehead pressed to clasped hands. "The war is ended," he murmured, more to himself than to Barristan. "Only the realm hasn't learned it yet." Barristan offered to ride south at once, take 500 seasoned men, and prove the truth. Rhaegar waved him off. "I will deal with Stannis in due course. For now, Storm's End can starve on rumors." Even as he said it, he thought of gaunt faces behind those walls. The small folk whose bellies had hollowed for Robert's war. He shut that image behind his eyelids and told Barristan to rest. That night, the prince walked the camp without escort. Lanterns guttered under canvas canopies, rain tapping softly on shields propped like sleeping beasts against horse carts. He found Robert's wagon beneath an elm draped with moss. A single lantern hung from a hook, hallowing straw and slumped shoulders. Robert's wrists were shackled through a ring bar. His chin rested on folded arms, breath visible in the chill. When he heard footfalls, he stirred but did not rise. "Come to gloat, dragon," he murmured. "No." Rhaegar unlatched the wagon gate and stepped inside. The air smelled of sweat and damp hay. He drew a wineskin from beneath his cloak, uncorked it. "It is arbor gold," he said. "Costly, but the only vintage with warmth enough to endure a blackwater winter." Robert frowned as though the gift soured his tongue. Still, he drank, spilling amber trickles down his beard. When the wineskin returned half empty, he wiped his mouth with the back of one bound hand. "Tastes of peaches," he muttered, recalling some boast he once made about summer's fruit. His voice broke. Rhaegar leaned against the wagon wall. Rain tapped above like distant drums. "Oaths," he said quietly. "Why did you swear them if you meant to break them?" Robert looked up, anger flashing but dulled by exhaustion. "Ask your own father," he snarled. "The Mad King. Did he honor his oaths when he burned Rickard Stark and strangled Brandon? Did he honor marriage vows when he bedded every maiden in King's Landing? Oaths cannot bind a man to madness. Nabawanasumchi. And yet you swore to the same crown," Rhaegar said. "To you," Robert corrected. "I swore to the prince who sang to his harp, who spoke of prophecy and peace. When you vanished with Lyanna, that prince vanished too." Rhaegar felt the sting of truth but masked it behind stillness. "I did not vanish. I sought something." "Something?" Robert laughed. "Ringing chains. You sought a crown of spring on your mistress' head. Call it what it is." Rhaegar closed his eyes. In darkness he saw Lyanna barefoot in the crypts of Winterfell, felt her hand brush dust from the knee of an ancient Stark effigy. "Love," she had whispered, "is the song the North never forgets." And he had believed her, or perhaps he had simply wanted to. "You will have trial," he said at last, voice soft. "Before the realm and the faith, they will hear your words and decide if your love outweighs your crimes." Robert scoffed, shifting chains. "And who will sit in judgment? Your father? The pyromancers? Tell me, dragon, does wildfire weigh more than love?" "My father will not rule that court," Rhaegar answered, though he had not yet dared to confront that truth. "I will." Robert's reply was a ragged whisper. "Then, sentence me now. Better the sword than this slow drowning of spirit." Rhaegar set the wineskin beside him. "No," he said. "The realm must see justice, not vengeance." "Sleep, Lord Robert." When he left the wagon, dawn had begun to silver the trailing mist. Rhaegar raised his eyes into that pale glow. Somewhere beyond lay King's Landing, a city of swords hidden beneath a crown of spires, waiting to receive its prodigal son and the burdens he brought in chains. They reached the capital at noon on the 12th day, banners flapping like bright wounds against a cobalt sky. The Dragon Gate opened under trumpets. Gold cloaks lined the streets, helms polished, crimson cloaks stiff as banners. Murmurs ran like a ripple through the crowd as the prisoner's cart rolled over cobbles cracked by years of firepot heat. Robert sat straight despite shackles, shoulders squared, head high, defiance blazing in blue eyes. Some small folk booed, others wept. One butcher's boy tossed a withered apple that spattered against Robert's breastplate, and rolled bruised beneath a horse's hoof. Rhaegar rode ahead, and yet he felt as though he were following the rumor of himself, the myth the city had crafted in his absence. Prince of Summer, Singer of Prophecy, Heir of Fire and Doom. Those titles clanged against him like ill-fitted armor. He thought of the rubies lost in the river, and wondered which names he had shed with them. They dismounted in the outer ward of the Red Keep, walls redder than river blood, and there Queen Rhaella waited, pale yet proud, a snow-colored mantle about her crowning silver hair. Beside her stood Maester Pycelle, beard perfumed with sweet luff, and Lord Varys shimmering in lavender silk like a spider walking sunlight. Behind them, 2 Kingsguard knelt at the foot of the Iron Throne. The throne, however, was empty. "Where is the king?" Rhaegar asked. Rhaella's eyes flicked toward the darkened doorway behind the dais. "He has not descended since word of your victory arrived. He feasts alone, or so the servants say." Rhaegar felt a chill. He remembered the last time he had seen his father, King Aerys on the throne, hands bleeding from iron barbs, nails torn, eyes aflame with secrets. Rhaegar had begged him to call off the pyromancers, to open the city gates and let his son ride against Robert. The king's reply had been laughter, high and brittle, echoing from blade to blade. "Let him come," Aerys had said. "Let all the traitors burn." "Send for him," Rhaegar commanded. "Tell him the war is over, and his son returns with victory in chains." Pycelle bowed. "Your Grace, His Majesty's humors have grown disordered. The leechings have offered scant relief. I will attend him myself," Rhaegar declared. He strode through the throne room, boots clanging on stone, while banners overhead drooped in stagnant air. Halfway to the council doors he paused and turned. Lord Varys assembled a small council within the hour. "Sir Barristan, place Robert Baratheon in the black cells beneath the God's fingers. See that he is fed and his wounds tended. I want no whisper of mistreatment." Barristan saluted, fist against breastplate. Varys bowed like a curtain falling. Rhaegar swept past crimson pillars and into shadowed corridors that stank of old smoke, of tallow, and of secrets. Maids curtsied, pages fled, and every step carried him deeper into stone silent halls that had once rung with his own youthful laughter, with Elias' gentle singing as she lulled Rhaenys to sleep, with echoes of dreams too fragile to survive the forging heat of war. Outside the king's apartments, 2 gaunt gold cloaks flanked the oak doors. They announced him, and hinges groaned, and a wave of stale air met him. Wine, burned salve, the acrid sting of wildfire resin. Aerys II Targaryen sat at a circular table, oil lamps sputtering, scrolls spread like flayed skin before him. His beard had grown wild, streaked with gray and green ash, and his purple eyes burned like twin amethysts in the gloom. He looked up slowly, lips twitching. "So the harpist returns," Aerys whispered. "Has the song ended, my son, or must we hear another verse?" Rhaegar sank to one knee. It felt more a concession to history than to the man. "The war is won, father. Robert Baratheon is taken. All rebel lords will bend the knee or break upon it. Peace can begin." "Peace," Aerys echoed, tasting the word as though it were poor poison. Did they bend the knee, these traitors? Did they sob for forgiveness? Did they pray for the king's mercy? "Some fought to the end," Rhaegar said carefully. "Others fled. But Robert lives, intended for trial." "Trial?" Aerys' smile widened, cracked. "Why grant trial to a traitor who sought my crown? Burn him, I say. Burn them all. Stark, Arryn, Tully. Let their ashes fertilize fields for 1,000 years. Only fire purifies treason." Rhaegar rose. "Burning only feeds rebellion, father. Mercy will bind the realm stronger than fear." "Mercy?" The king's hand twitched, as though reaching for unseen flames. "Did mercy spare my loyal men at Duskendale? Did mercy spare your mother's honor when Tywin's men raped the Riverlands? A lion cannot rule among sheep by bleating." "No," said Rhaegar, voice thin steel. "A dragon must rule with wisdom and fire. But wisdom first." Aerys stared at him. Stark stillness broken only by the jitter of a torch's shadow across his cheek. "You will be king soon enough," the monarch whispered. "The prophecies say so. I have seen the comet in my dreams, a bleeding star, heralding the dragon's rebirth. But know this, fire is the womb of dragons. Without it, there is only silence." Rhaegar bowed, though inside he trembled. "Then let this victory be our fire, father. The flames are spent, the forge is cooled. Now we must mold iron into peace." "No." Aerys' laughter chased him from the room like sparks from a wildfire kettle. Rhaegar walked swiftly, breathing shallow, until the echoes faded. The crown's future lay like a blade balanced on a hair. Aerys' madness on one edge, Robert's chains on the other. And somewhere in that trembling gap Rhaegar must plant the world's next dawn. That dusk the small council gathered in the Tower of the Hand. Rhaegar sat at the head. On his right, Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled parchments full of whispered drought and plague. On his left, Lord Varys folded white hands atop his silk sleeve, eyes glittering like black pearls. Lords Hightower, Estermont, and Redwine arrived by Raven's summons, leaving proxies in Oldtown and the Arbor. Lord Carleton Chelstead, Master of Coin and Wildfire, attended but said little, gaze flicking to Varys whenever the spider inhaled. Rhaegar opened with a single sentence: "The realm must heal." He spoke of rebuilding, of grain levies for the riverlands, of indemnities for houses that stayed loyal, of pardons for those who surrendered swiftly. When he named Robert Baratheon Oathbreaker of Storm's End, the council murmured approval, though Varys' brow quirked. When he declared a public trial under the Faith's Eye, Pycelle nodded but reminded that precedent favored royal decree in matters of treason. Rhaegar thanked him and decreed that precedent must serve justice, not supplant it. Then he announced his intent to fetch Lyanna Stark from the Dornish Tower, where she rested under Kingsguard watch. A hush fell. Lord Redwine cleared his throat. Pycelle's quills stilled. Varys' voice floated like incense. "Your Grace, many tales swirl about the Lady Lyanna. Her virtue, her health, her rumored child. Some lords might take umbrage at her presence in King's Landing before matters of legitimacy are adjudicated." Rhaegar held the eunuch's gaze. "Then let them take it. She will be honored. And Princess Elia," Pycelle ventured, drumming ink-stained fingers. "She remains my wife and queen-to-be," Rhaegar answered, though his heart buckled under the weight of that simple sentence. "She will meet Lady Lyanna without fear." He dismissed the council and lingered at the window, watching night gather over Blackwater Bay. Lanterns winked in distant ships like lonely stars seeking constellation. He thought of Elia's soft laughter, Lyanna's wild joy, the hush of prophecy that had once consumed his every breath. The song of ice and fire, the promised prince, the dawn after darkness. How could one heart hold so many worlds without breaking? He would need 5 hours, 5 days, 5 lifetimes perhaps, to answer that. For now, he had only the hush before dawn, and the bitter knowledge that victory was merely the prologue to the truer war. The war to keep peace alive. Sleep evaded him. He found refuge atop the Tower of the White Sword, where the Kingsguard kept vigil. Sir Gerald Hightower stood beside the parapet, white cloak stained faintly red at the hems, the scar on his cheek stark in moonlight. "Your Grace," Gerald said, offering wine. "The city simmers." "Let it simmer," Rhaegar murmured, sipping. "So long as it does not boil." Gerald nodded toward the alley-ribboned labyrinth of Flea Bottom. Fires twinkled there, hearths and kilns and torches, weaving eerie constellations. "Small folk will chant your name by sunrise," he said. "Some with love, some with fear. Better love." Rhaegar studied the stars. A frosty wind chased tattered clouds west, revealing the sword of the morning star pattern, a glittering blade pointed at no foe. He wondered if Arthur saw it from his encampment beyond Storm's End. "Will they love a prince who took 2 brides?" Rhaegar asked. Gerald's silence was heavy. "The realm forgave Aegon the Conqueror," he said at last. "He took sisters to wife and forged a kingdom. But dragons no longer inspire awe. They inspire dread, Rhaegar said. And I am no conqueror. Gerald tipped his cup. Not yet. Thunder growled beyond the bay, and Rhaegar imagined it was the roar of ancient worms stirring in the deep earth. Somewhere in that echo, he almost heard the breaking of chains, the forging of swords, the weeping of widows. The songs of the realm had not ended. They had merely paused, drawing breath for their next verse. As dawn's first blush pinked the horizon, Rhaegar descended the tower's spiral stair and walked the silent corridors toward the queen's apartments. Outside Elias' door he hesitated, hand hovering over polished oak. Candlelight flickered within, shadows weaving, and he heard the soft coo of infant Aegon. The rustle of linen as a mother soothed her babe. He could not enter, not yet. The words were not ready. Instead, he turned down an unlit hallway, deeper into the keep's heart, to a door forgotten by all but the most dutiful guards. 2 Kingsguard bowed and unlocked the cell beyond. Within, Robert Baratheon sat on a stool, ankles shackled to the flooring. He looked up, hair damp with sweat, eyes bloodshot yet sharp. "No crown today, dragon?" Robert asked. "No crown yet." Rhaegar stepped inside, shutting the door behind him. Silence hung like damp wool. Robert cracked a rueful grin. "Have you come to weigh my soul?" "Not your soul," Rhaegar said. "Your words. I will send ravens this dawn, summoning Lords Arryn and Stark to King's Landing. You will stand before them, before the faith, before half the realm. When they ask why you broke oaths, what will you say?" "Lenera." Robert's answer was a sigh. "I will say I broke them for Lyanna. And if the High Septon names love an insufficient defense." Robert's chains clanked as he shifted. "Then the gods are blind, and I shall swing." Rhaegar regarded him, noting the bruises darkening Robert's wrists, the swelling at his temple. "I do not want your death, Robert." "Then free me." "You will never be free to raise banners again," Rhaegar said. Robert chuckled, low and hoarse. "The heart bears banners you cannot see." Rhaegar turned to leave, but Robert called after him. "Tell me, dragon, is she well?" Rhaegar paused at the threshold. "Lyanna is safe," he said softly. "When winter breaks, she will see the snow melt into flowers." Robert closed his eyes, and for a heartbeat he looked like a boy at prayer, face upturned to a summer sky. "Then chains matter little," he whispered. Rhaegar left him with that fragile peace and climbed to the courtyard where dawn spilled golden light across towers. Bells began to ring, slow peals first, then rippling into a jubilant cacophony. Drums thumped, banners unfurled, and from every crooked alley voices rose. "The war is over. The prince has come home." But even as the city exhaled, Rhaegar knew peace would demand more blood than battle ever had. The rubies he'd lost to the river would be easy to replace, the trust of a realm less so. Every step toward the throne led through mazes of fear and hope, and every oath sworn in those halls might yet fracture like river ice under an unseasoned boot. Still, he walked on, shoulders squared against the rising sun. In the hush between peals of the bells, he heard the faintest whisper. Future or fate, he could not tell, singing a single fragile truth: victories end, stories endure. And so the prince resolved that his story, whatever darkness lay within, would strive to end in dawn. Rain faded into a chilled hush that curled around the red keep stone like a lover reluctant to leave, and the city's pulse slowed under slate clouds streaked with rose. In that half-light between night's sigh and morning's first clear breath, Rhaegar wandered the silent sept, an antechamber to the royal sept, where marble saints knelt in shadow. The polished floor reflected flickers from 100 candles, each flame bowing to the slightest draft from unseen corridors. Every echo in this sanctum felt amplified. A sigh, a step, the brush of silk against gold-washed greaves. It was a place fashioned for contemplation, but Rhaegar found it pressed his doubts too close to the skin, as if the statues themselves whispered all the questions he feared, speaking aloud. He paused before the mother's alcove. Her sculpted eyes seemed full of forgiveness, yet her arms remained eternally outstretched, never quite touching. He wished they could. Somewhere beyond those walls Aelia stirred, perhaps awakening to the hush of dawn, or to whispered news about Lyanna's imminent arrival. Did Aelia feel hope, dread, or a mixture that hollowed her heart with every beat? He imagined her poised grace, always dignified even when tears threatened, her voice soft yet certain as she sang to their children at dusk. He wanted to be worthy of that grace, yet every promise he shaped felt flimsy beside the memory of flowers falling in Lyanna's dark hair, petals that smelled of winter and wild places. The prince's breath fogged in the chill as he knelt, fingers pressed to smooth marble. A line from an old Valyrian prayer rose unbidden: duty before desire, honor before flame. He mouthed it without sound, not trusting his voice to hold steady. The realm expected him to balance a sword on one palm and a rose on the other, without spilling a single petal. But he feared both edges would cut him sooner than the task was done. The reverie broke when Sir Oswell arrived, white cloak damp at the hem. His normally tranquil mien held tension, as if he'd hurried through drafts not meant for royal lungs. "Your Grace," he said, bowing. "Forgive the interruption. A raven from River Rontot. Lord Hoster, Tully, reports Eddard Stark and a swollen northern host ride for King's Landing. They crossed the Green Fork within days." "Nistimo." Rhaegar rose, joints protesting softly, as much from sleeplessness as armor's weight. "How large a host?" 6,000 lances, 4,000 archers, near half again that in spearmen. Lord Jon Arryn rides with them, accompanied by the Erie's banners. Rhaegar exhaled. "Send reply. We welcome Stark and Arryn under the banner of truce. They must camp outside the city until the High Septon convenes the trial. And Oswell, ensure the reply is carried by a northern knight in our service, someone Stark might trust." Nimiturmati went bowed again, but worry lingered in his dark eyes. "The wild rumor is Lord Stark rides for vengeance, not parley. Robert's chains fuel anger." "Let anger come," Rhaegar murmured, though a shiver trailed down his spine. "We will meet it with justice." When the knight departed, Rhaegar allowed himself a final glance at the mother, drew breath, and turned toward corridors lit by a dull dawn glow. Stone seemed to pulse beneath his feet, as if the castle's buried dragons beat enormous wings in time with his heart. The small council reconvened 2 hours after sunrise, a damp gust rattling shutters in the Tower of the Hand. Varys arrived first, gliding like a pale moth, his lavender robes today trimmed with darker indigo that deepened the purple in his eyes. Pycelle followed, flanked by apprentices bearing scroll satchels, his beard fragrant with mint oil. Carlton Chelstead, master of coin and wildfire, arrived last, cheeks flushed from climbing spirals too swiftly for his round frame. Only one chair remained conspicuously empty, that of Tywin Lannister, Warden of the West, who had ignored ravens for months. Rhaegar folded his hands on polished oak. "My lords, Eddard Stark approaches with Jon Arryn and a northern host. Until trial, they remain guests under truce. I will greet them beyond the city wall. We will dine together before they see Robert, so no rumor distorts truth." Pycelle dipped his quill. "Wise, your grace. Yet some lords whisper that a sword's moot is simpler than a trial. One arm severed, and the realm is healed." "Nimesam." "Sever one arm, another grips the sword," Rhaegar replied. "No, the realm must see laws stronger than revenge." Chelstead cleared his throat. "Speaking of laws, wildfire stores remain at half capacity from the king's experiments. His Majesty requests replenishment." Rhaegar's lips tightened. "Suspend new orders. Not one more jar until I say so." Chelstead blanched. "But His Majesty is king," Rhaegar finished gently. "Yet wildfire is coin I control now. The realm rebuilds. We need bread, not dragonflame." "Beneficent and Sol." Varys' fingers drummed, eyes half-lidded. "Grain ships from the Reach cluster off the arbor," he said. "They await harbor fees pledged by the crown. 10,000 gold dragons should clear the lanes and fill the capital's granaries before winter." Rhaegar nodded. "Paid from the Master of Coin's ledger. Offset by a luxury tariff on wine and silk." Chelstead sputtered but bowed. Pycelle scribbled. They moved through petitions, Duskendale's harbor repairs, reappointment of Lord Hightower as hand to pacify Old Town's restless Septon scholars, pardons for Riverland houses that bent knee at Maidenpool. Each motion hammered another nail into the coffin of rebellion, but Rhaegar felt each nail drive deeper into his spine. When they adjourned, Varys remained seated. The eunuch waited until pages had departed, then spoke in a hush that lingered like incense smoke. "Your Grace, might I suggest a gentler stage for the northern arrival? Flea Bottom's whispers twist truth faster than a Dornish sandstorm. A pageant, perhaps. A tourney. Let the small folk see Stark and Arryn not as invading wolves but as honored guests. Nyatersari. A tourney," Rhaegar echoed, the word carrying bittersweet resonance of the tourney at Harrenhal, where music and roses first wove his heart's chains. Jousts stained ground with blood, though. Would small folk cheer lost fingers, shattered ribs, when half-still mourn husbands from the Trident? True, Varys allowed. But a singer can frame a broken lance as sacrifice for unity. Bread fills bellies. Spectacle fills hearts. One without the other is half a feast. Rhaegar considered. Begin preparations, but no lavish purse. Victors win honor, not coins better used for grain. And bar mummers from mocking Robert's name. The trial must speak for itself. As you wish. Varys rose, robes whispering. The realm will taste honey, not vinegar. Yet as the spider left, Rhaegar wondered whether honey might disguise poison, sweet upon the tongue until it choked. Ilya greeted him in a garden court perched above the bay, sunlight silvering along the locus of her hairnet gemstones. Draped in pale blue silk, she looked every inch a queen, if a touch paler than once, shadows faint beneath her eyes. Little Rhaenys scampered between rosebushes, chasing a lime-winged butterfly, squealing each time petals shook dew onto her cheeks. Aegon dozed in a wicker cradle beneath a gauzy shade, a tiny fist clenched as if claiming the future. Ilya turned from the children and offered Rhaegar a smile. Gentle, wondering. "They speak of northern armies beyond our gates," she said softly. "Should I fear?" "Fear nothing," Rhaegar answered, brushing a strand of raven hair behind her ear. "Eddard Stark seeks justice, not vengeance. I will grant him its stage." Her dark eyes searched his. "And Lyanna?" He felt his throat tighten. "She will come to the city soon under escort. You have every courtesy as First Queen. Her presence need not diminish yours." Elias' lashes swept downward. "I hear the girls whisper," she said. "They call her beauty sharper than swords. But swords can be sheathed. Beauty wounds forever." "Last shot?" Rhaegar cupped her chin. "Your beauty healed me first, and heals me still." She smiled at that, truly smiled, then kissed his palm. "Then let our children heal the realm," she murmured. "Rhaenys wants to give her new cousin the seashell she found in Dorne. Perhaps that peace could start with 2 babes in one cradle." His chest ached with tenderness and remorse interwoven. "A cradle built of dragon bone and direwolf fur," he said. "We will carve it together." A bell tolled thrice from the main keep, summoning riders to gates. Rhaegar lingered enough to gather Rhaenys in his arms, twirl her once with an airy laugh, and press a kiss to Aegon's brow. Then he strode from the garden into sunlight bright as newly hammered steel. 3 days later, banners rippled along fields beyond the mud gate. Northmen, in boiled leather and wolf pelts, formed ranks along a gentle rise, snowflake sigils fluttering though the day was warm. Southern sunlight painted ruddiness across faces unused to heat. The hiss of whetstones on axes drifted like an old folk lullaby. Eddard Stark rode at columns 4 astride a dappled gray destrier, his cloak of ice-white fur pinned with a solitary iron deerwolf. On one flank rode Jon Arryn, slender and hawkish, eyes shrewd beneath pale curls. On the other, Howland Reed of the Crannogs, his reed-green cloak damp with marsh scent even here. Archers lined the rear, arrows fletched in gray and white, while Arryn's Vale Lancers bore sky blue and moon white. Rhaegar's party approached across a grassy apron flanked by gold cloaks, bearing spears reversed in token of peace. Arthur Dane, recalled by Raven, rode on the prince's right, Dawn's pommel wrapped in violet cloth. Barristan rode left, helm plume streaming like a comet's tail. Trumpets blared once. Dust settled. Silence claimed the field. Rhaegar dismounted first, helm tucked beneath his arm. He stepped forward alone until wind tugged his cloak into a crimson line across spring grass. Eddard mirrored him, sliding from saddle with fluid quiet, gloved hand resting on the pommel of ice, sheathed, but its presence colossal. When they halted 10 paces apart, one raven croaked overhead, the only sound. Stark's gray eyes held winter calm. "Your Grace, Lord Eddard." Rhaegar inclined his head. "You come under promise of safe conduct. My word is iron." Eddard's lips barely moved. "The North keeps faith in honor, not iron, but your word suffices." "Where's Robert?" "Alive, tended, awaiting trial." "And Lyanna?" Rhaegar felt the field lean into that name, every blade of grass bending. "Safe in Dorne. She will be escorted here in a fortnight." Something softened behind Stark's sternness. Relief maybe, though his face remained stone. "The realm bleeds rumors, Dadial. We will bleed truth instead." "Nah. Truth begins today," Rhaegar agreed. "Ride with me. Share bread, salt, and our word before the city." Jon Arryn spurred forward then, voice crisp. "Dot. And if bread crumbles or salt proves bitter, word alone cannot muffle the cries of widows." Rhaegar met Arryn's gaze. "Justice will address those cries at trial. Until then, I ask trust enough for this meeting." Arryn considered, then nodded once. Stark signaled his captains. Northern spears grounded, wolves lowered muzzles stitched on banners, and lords began to dismount. Armor creaked like old trees. They rode together beneath a mild sun to a pavilion pitched between camps, its striped canvas white and red, colors of heart and blood. Inside, oak tables bore trenchers of crusty bread, bowls of sea salt, ewers of cool water, plates of river trout, orchard apples. Tradition required bread and salt first. Rhaegar tore bread, dipped in salt, offered pieces to each lord, who reciprocated, ancient rite sealing guest rights. Only then did wary conversation begin. Jon Arryn spoke of grain shortages in the Vale, requested shipments from Crownland stores. Rhaegar promised surplus from Golden Grove, in exchange for ships to haul reach grain north. Howland Reed described raiders on White Knife. Arthur Dane offered garrison men as escort. Bit by brittle bit, dispute melded to dialogue. Yet no words unknotted the tension between Rhaegar and Eddard, each question as barbed as a snow-sheathed pine branch. Stark asked of Brandon and Rickard, throats burned by wildfire on Aerys's order. Rhaegar said he mourned their deaths, and swore inquiry into Pyromancer Guild complicity. Stark's jaw clenched. Inquiry is not justice. Rhaegar promised justice would follow truth. They tasted each syllable like men testing blades for sharpness. When a sand-colored dusk settled, Rhaegar invited them within the walls. Eddard declined. His men would camp beyond. Trust was not breeches to be donned in haste. Arryn agreed to chambers in the Dragon Gate barracks, citing age and aches. Rhaegar accepted both decisions. Before Stark remounted, he grasped Rhaegar's forearm suddenly, strength in his lean fingers. If Lyanna arrives harmed, if Robert dies before trial, no army south of Moat Cailin will halt northern wrath. Rhaegar met that glacial stare. "I do not desire harm for any, Lord Stark. Help me prove it." They parted then, two men carrying hearts heavy with sisters, lovers, kingdoms. That night, Rhaegar could not sleep. Wind howled against tower slits, rattling shutters like skeleton knuckles. Somewhere in the castle Aerys shrieked at servants. Rhaegar heard far-off echoes of wildfire, and traitors before doors slammed. He paced his solar, harp leaning silent against a chair. Music felt like blasphemy amid this discordant night. A knock at the door startled him. Oswell entered, moonlight streaking across his helm. "Your Grace," he said, voice low. Scout returned from Storm's End. Stannis' fleet anchored off Tarth, gathering cell sails under no banners. Caradoc Estermont spotted on board, raising men under the stag. Rhaegar's temples throbbed. Viserys cannot breach storms, and loyalists inside hold firm under Castellan Courtenay Penrose. Supplies dwindle, but they will not yield. Recall Viserys, Rhaegar said. Storm's End must starve, not burn. I will parley with Stannis after Robert's trial. Might so. Oswell hesitated. Another matter, your grace. A raven came from Casterly Rock at dusk. Lord Tywin accepts invitation to court, arrival in 3 days. That surprised Rhaegar more than storms or rebels. Tywin's silence had been louder than a siege. Now the lion stirred, likely drawn by scent of opportunity, or blood. Prepare quarters equal to his station, Rhaegar said. But triple guards on the king's apartments. Tywin chases power. As Went left, Rhaegar finally seated himself beside the dormant harp. He plucked one string, soft as starlight, and chords drifted like icicles melting in dawn. He played until pink spilled across his window, and realized he had woven no melody at all, only trembling, scattered notes of longing. Within a fortnight, the capital swelled with banners. Gray dairy wolves brushed shoulders with red stags aground. Arryn falcons perched beside Tyrell roses flown in courtesy from Highgarden to supply grain barges. Vale knights filled taverns with airy jests. Northmen drank quietly, eyes pale as midwinter ice. The city thrummed, unsettled as bees anticipating storm. On the 8th morning of small councils and clandestine meetings, a horn blast from the river gate sent ripples through every courtyard. Princess Lyanna arrived. Rhaegar hurried to the gatehouse, heart pounding. She rode beneath a white canopy borne by Dornish spearmen, Gerald Hightower at its point, barring dust. Lyanna sat upright on a dappled mare, belly rounded with late motherhood, hair unbound and wind-tossed. Her cloak of direwolf gray pinned by a 7-pointed star shimmered with frostborn pearls. When her gaze found Rhaegar, something flickered. Fear. He stepped forward, and for a heartbeat the throng hushed, swords hands loosening, breath held. Then Rhaegar knelt in the dust before her horse, unsheathed Blackfire, and laid it flat across his palms, surrendering the ancestral blade. Lady Lyanna Winterfell, he said, voice carrying. All my titles bow before your courage. Welcome to King's Landing. The gesture stunned watchers. Some gasped, others whispered that dragons never kneel. Eddard Stark, present beside the gate, eyes widened, then softened. Lyanna dismounted slowly, her feet sinking into straw strewn by city folk. She touched Rhaegar's shoulder. Stand, my prince. No man kneels before me when our child yet kneels before the world. He rose, sliding Blackfire back into scabbard. They exchanged a look. Shared histories, grave missteps, impossible futures. And at once everyone present knew they conversed beyond words. Procession wound through streets still scarred by war. Some small folk cheered, recalling lupus-browed girl racing through red keep halls years before. Others glared, muttering about abductions. Lyanna bore every gaze with stoic pride. At the Sept of Baelor, she paused, bowed to the statues, and whispered something only Rhaegar heard. Let the seven judge us. I ask no more. That afternoon, Aelia received Lyanna and the Queen's Solar. Rhaegar waited outside with Arthur Dayne, pulse hammering louder than carpenters at the Tower of the Hand's renovations. Minutes trickled, each a droplet of molten lead poised to burn. When the door finally opened, Aelia emerged first, cheeks tear-streaked yet resolved. Lyanna followed, eyes raw but shining with something like hope. They clasped hands briefly while maids observed, wide-eyed. Rhaegar exhaled a breath he felt he had been holding since Harrenhal. That night, a light rain tapped slate roofs, while the Red Keep held a modest feast for union. Rhaegar sat between Aelia and Lyanna, each in conversation with the other more than with him. They spoke of childbirth pains, Dornish herbs for nausea, the chill of northern nights. Rhaegar marveled at their courage. Two women forging alliance where men brandished swords. Perhaps peace would indeed begin with babes in one cradle, as Aelia dreamed. But across the hall, Tywin Lannister watched, from a high-backed chair, seldom smiling. When the guests filed to retire, Tywin approached Rhaegar to tie. "Your Grace," the lion said, voice even. "The realm celebrates harmony, yet some debts remain unpaid. Jaime begs return to King's Guard despite my wishes. And Cersei, she remains unwed. A future queen still." Rhaegar understood the unspoken. Tywin offered Cersei to secure proximity to power. "Cersei deserves a match worthy of her strength," he said politely. "But I am already wed, twice." Tywin's green-gold gaze flickered over Elia and Lyanna across the hall. "Yes," he murmured. "A delicate braid of loyalties. Braids can fray. Better to bind with chain." "Me." Rhaegar held the warden's stare. "Chains corrode. I prefer living bonds." Tywin inclined his head. "A bow or a predator's calculative tilt. Living things can die." Then he retreated through yawning doors, crimson cloak trailing like spilled wine. Arthur Dayne approached as Tywin vanished. "He gouges cracks in stone," Arthur said quietly. "He will widen any he finds." Rhaegar nodded. "Then we must fill them with trust before he finds purchase." The day of trial dawned beneath a steel-gray dome of cloud. A scaffold dais rose outside the great septi, draped in scarlet and white. The High Septon awaited atop in pearl-studded robes. Seats of polished oak formed circles for lords paramount, lesser knights, small folk, and faith delegates. Bells tolled, low and solemn. Robert Baratheon emerged in chains, but his beard trimmed, linen clean, wounds salved. Guards guided him to a stand of iron bars fronting the dais. Wind whipped his black hair. He stood tall, gaze sweeping the gathered throng. Murmurs rippled like trout beneath river ice. Admiration, pity, rage. On an opposite dais, Elia sat beside Lyanna beneath a canopy decorated with both Targaryen red dragons and Stark direwolves entwined. Some lords exchanged looks. Others quietly blessed themselves, seeing prophecy unfold. Rhaegar took his place before the High Septon, Blackfire sheathed. To his right stood Eddard Stark, to his left, Jon Arryn. The arrangement alone testified to fragile unity. The High Septon raised a cloth-bound tome, Annals of Justice, and opened to blank page. "By Seven and Realm," he intoned. "Let truth be spoken, falsehood burned by light." He invited Robert to speak first. The crowd leaned as one body. Robert placed manacled hands on the rail. "I broke my oath to Aerys Targaryen," he declared, voice carrying. "I broke it because he burned innocents, because he murdered Lord Rickard and Brandon Stark without trial. I broke it because his heir stole my betrothed." Lyanna flinched, but Eddard's hand rested atop hers. Robert saw this, faltered, then went on. "And lied to the realm. If oathbreakers we be, then oathbreak I share with the dragon himself." He pointed at Rhaegar. "For what oath binds a prince who crowns another's love, while wife yet lives?" Gasps. Elias' face paled. Lyanna's knuckles whitened. Rhaegar's pulse thundered, but he kept voice calm. "I abducted no one. Lady Lyanna came by her choice." "Choice?" Robert roared. "A girl promised to another, whisked south under whispers." Lyanna stood, belly pronounced beneath direwolf cloak dot. "Robert," she said, voice clear yet trembling. "I fled Winterfell of my own will. You loved me, as sister loves brother. I could not breathe inside the box of your dreams for me." Robert's chains rattled as he sagged. "My dreams were gold and roses. Yours were frost and freedom," she finished. "Now enough." Eddard rose, ice in his tone. "Let accusations cease. My sister has spoken. I will hear no man call her unwilling." The crowd murmured anew. The High Septon consulted a panel of 5 Septons and Septas behind him. "We have charges of treason, oath-breaking, murder." He turned to Rhaegar. "Your Grace, do you press for death?" All eyes flooded Rhaegar. He saw Elias' quiet plea for mercy, Lyanna's fierce independence, Eddard's stoic expectation, and Robert's stubborn defiance ringed with sorrow. "I press for life," Rhaegar said. Shock rippled. "Life in service." Robert Baratheon, shall forfeit claim to Storm's End. Titles, arms, he shall serve as sworn brother of the Night's Watch until death take him. Thus his strength guards realm that he once imperiled. Nay. A roaring hush, an oxymoron manifest, crashed through the square. The Night's Watch. Some lords spat, calling that exile too soft. Others nodded, seeing principle. Eddard's brow lifted. He glanced at Robert. Robert's laugh boomed. Send me north, dragon. I'll drink with black crows till end of days. But know this, no wall stop songs. My name will echo. Let it, Rhaegar answered. Echo, as a warning and a pledge. Broken oaths mend in shadow for the realm's shield. The High Septon conferred once more, then raised both hands. By faith and crown, sentence stands. Robert, henceforth Oathbreaker, you ride to the wall at first light. Robert bowed stiffly. Then, may the wall stand forever. Rhaegar exhaled. Half the lords erupted in debate. Tywin's expression revealed nothing. But Eddard's nod signaled acceptance, if grudging. Jon Arryn sighed relief. The trial concluded with chance. Bells pealed again. Higher, lighter, a note of release. Yet Rhaegar knew illusions best in first glow. Cracks often widen once echo fades. That evening, torches lined the quay where a black ship named Old Bear ready to sail for Eastwatch. Chains off, Robert boarded with a dozen sworn brothers escorting. Before ramp retracted, Rhaegar appeared alone. He tossed a small bundle, a silver flask embossed with a stag. Robert caught it, brows furrowing. For cold nights, Rhaegar said. Robert studied the prince. You'll stay king long as you heed lessons in these boards. They're old, like oaths. Care for both. Rhaegar inclined his head. Farewell, Lord Robert. Call me brother, Robert said with half-smile. In winter we're all brothers. The ship drifted into indigo and torchlight trailed like fireflies. Rhaegar watched until nothing remained but lapping water and the hush of waves against pilings. Only then did he sense another presence. Eddard. He will find peace on the wall, Ned murmured. Better than a grave. Peace is a wall we all build, Rhaegar replied. Ned's eyes reflected starlight. Now build peace in these streets. My men yearn for north, my sister for childbed, your queen for healing. Winter comes. Not rouse. Stay for the babe's birth, Rhaegar asked. Let us christen new bonds together. Ned considered, then nodded. A fortnight, no more. Tywin struck 2 days after. Guards discovered a dead cell-keeper in dungeons. Throat slit, and wildfire jars missing. Panic spread. They found 3 jars nestled beneath Sept stanchions supporting the pulpit where High Septon prayed. Another beneath Barrack's larder. A scribbled lion sigil scrawled on each. Rhaegar confronted Tywin in garden shadows. The Lion Lord denied involvement, plausible outrage smoothing his voice. Assume every jar a trap set by other enemies hoping you blame me, he said. I counsel caution, not accusation. Barristan thought Tywin's denial false. Arthur argued vantage of proof. Rhaegar ordered search of every cellar, gate tower, warehouse. By dusk, they found 12 more jars. Whoever planted them moved with knowledge of keep geometry. That night, Rhaegar met Arthur and Eddard in a candle-lit map room. Rain hammered windows, and lightning flashed across chalk outlines of Red Keep corridors. They weighed suspects, Tywin, pyromancers seeking favor, Eris's loyalists, aching to restore Reign of Fire. How to guard a city against flames hidden in every shadow. Arthur proposed curfew, Ned proposed removing the fire. Douse city reservoir onto basements. Arthur worried of structural ruin. Ned argued ashes preferable to wildfire. Rhaegar sat silent until lightning illuminated his reflection on polished helm. We must remove father from his chambers, he said. His obsession is tinder to this spark. Barristan volunteered to escort the king to Maegor's holdfast, but Rhaegar shook his head. My duty. He rose, resolve heavy as plate. Keep watch. If conflagration begins, evacuate queen and lords to Dragon Pit. That dome holds stone thick enough. Arthur clasped his shoulder. Eyes open, brother. Rhaegar crossed torchlit halls toward Aerys's apartment. He expected screaming servants. Instead, he found halls deserted, shadows pooling like spilled ink. At the king's door, 2 gold cloaks lay crumpled, throats slit. His blood chilled. Unsheathing Blackfire, he nudged the door. Inside, wildfire stench singed the air. Aerys knelt before a brazier filled with jade flames licking ceiling beams. His silver hair wild, lips chanting slurred Valyrian cant. At his feet lay scorched parchments bearing the city's street plans. Beside the brazier, 4 more wildfire jars with stoppers removed, their liquid shimmering. "Father," Rhaegar shouted, voice cracking. "Enough." Aerys turned, eyes reflecting hellfire. "Too late, son. The city bathes in dragon's breath tonight. Let traitors burn." He seized a jar. Rhaegar lunged. The jar fell, green fluid splashing across stone. Flames whooshed as liquid met brazier sparks, heat blistering instant. Rhaegar hauled his father backward, throwing cloak onto spill. Cloth burst alight. Aerys shrieked, clawing. Blackfire clanged down as Rhaegar smothered flames with tapestry ripped from wall. Smoke thickened. When cough subsided, Rhaegar dragged Aerys from the room. King's wrists gripped steel tight. "Guards!" he yelled. None came. Corridors eerily empty. A figure emerged from gloom then. Tywin Lannister, armored, flanked by red cloaks. Torchlight flickered across his impassive face. "Your Grace," he said to Rhaegar. "I heard uproar, came to aid." Rhaegar assessed scene. Burning doorway. Unconscious pyromancers in hall. Wildfire hiss. "Help me secure the jars." Tywin nodded. His men advanced, coordinated, dousing flames with sand from bucket brigades. Rhaegar bound Aerys with silk cords from tattered drapes. The king wept, muttering about bells and traitors. Later, in council chamber, Tywin proposed what many feared. "The king is unfit. Realm requires regency. Name yourself Rhaegar, regent. Crown when ready." Pycelle trembled but agreed. Even Varys voiced cautious support. Only Chelsted dissented, until Rhaegar displayed scorched plans of city sewer lines. Evidence of Aerys's intent to ignite caches beneath populous districts. Chelsted paled, bowed acquiescence. Thus, under candlelight thick with smoke, Rhaegar accepted regency. He ordered Aerys confined to comfortable quarters under healer watch. And he swore, before lords and gods, to rebuild realm in mercy's fire, not madness. Outside, rain finally ceased. Dawn broke clear and gold over rooftops still slick. From Maegor's ramparts, Rhaegar watched light gild the city seas of red tile. Bells rang, not alarm this time, but a steady peal of transition. Northmen, Reachmen, Vale Knights, Dornish spears. They all paused, ears tilted upward. Change entered their lungs with morning air. Elia joined him. Shawl pulled tight. Lyanna came too, one hand at her rounded belly. They stood on either side of the prince, quiet but unwavering. Below, small folk emerged from hovels to see if world remained. Sun painted smiles onto wary faces. A baker tossed handfuls of crust to crows who squawked approval. Rhaegar breathed deep. "No more wildfire. No more wildfire," Elia echoed. Lyanna added, "Only hearth flames to warm children." He placed an arm around each, and together they faced the newborn sun. Behind them, Arthur Dayne approached with a parchment. Reports of ships unloading grain, of the Night's Watch vessel rounding Cape Kraken, of Tyrell masons volunteering to rebuild burned river villages. Rhaegar looked once more over spires, markets, throngs. He felt history rumble. Prophecies whispering of ice and fire, of dragons reborn in human hearts, of songs that outlast kings. But for now, he cherished simpler music, hammers striking wood, children laughing, bells heralding life, not death. One chapter closed with hiss of smothered flame. Another opened on wings of dawn. And in the hush between, Rhaegar Targaryen vowed that his reign, tempered by chains, roses, and ruins, would be forged in humility, annealed by justice, and sharpened by love's enduring heat. Far to the north, a black ship cut through mist toward a wall of ancient ice, bearing a former rebel whose laughter already stirred ravens to flight. But that, Rhaegar knew, was another story. One he hoped would end in watchful peace rather than war song. For here, in King's Landing, the first fragile notes of harmony began to rise, tentative yet resolute, like green shoots breaking snow, determined to grow toward the sun. Ka-ki. The moon rode high above Blackwater Bay, an iridescent coin adrift on cloud-shattered glass, while King's Landing exhaled the first easy breath it had drawn in years. For once, no bells tolled alarm, no wildfire smoke crawled skyward, no rebel horns echoed beyond the walls. Yet inside the Red Keep, the candles burned long past midnight, sending interrogative blades of light across corridors where secrets once skulked in comfortable dark. Rhaegar Targaryen, newly appointed regent of the Seven Kingdoms, felt those candles like weights upon his shoulders. Each flame was a question he could not yet answer. Each guttering wick, a life depending on decisions he dared not postpone. Even so, he lingered in the tower of the hand study, one boot propped on a stool, polishing the wooden hilt of his harp, rather than signing the parchment stack, looming beside a slowly cooling flagon of spiced wine. Music had always helped him unknot thoughts. A plucked fifth to anchor a query, a minor third to tease out doubt, a bright sixth to point toward courage. Tonight, however, the strings yielded only hesitant whispers, as if the harp sensed how precarious harmony truly was. A knock broke the silence. Sir Arthur Dayne slipped inside, white cloak fluttering. In his wake trailed Varys, gliding like a moonlit moth. Arthur's ordinary serenity was punctured by a crease between his brows. Varys, by contrast, wore the same soft smile that suggested he catalogued every heartbeat in the city. "Forgive the hour," Arthur said, removing his silvered half-helm. "A raven from the wall, your grace, and news from Duskendale as well." Rhaegar stilled the harp. "The wall first, Dart." Arthur handed over an oiled leather tube. Rhaegar unfurled the parchment. The ink was hurried, blotched in places by what looked like ice crystals melted into dark blooms. "Lord Commander Corgyle writes that Robert Baratheon arrived safely." He read aloud. "The brothers received him without incident, though some black brothers recall father's dead upon the Trident." Words grew heated, then cooled under the commander's gavel. "Robert vows to serve faithfully. Already he leads dawn drills." A faint smile tugged Rhaegar's lips. Robert swinging practice blades against frost-rimmed dawn, thunder laughs startling crows into flight. Let the bards remember that. The stag who roared into legend, then roared into duty. Varys clasped his hands. A useful legend, yet also a dangerous one, depending who polishes it. If tales of Robert's valor spread too bright, lords might deem Night's Watch exile a martyrdom, not punishment. "Then we ensure his name shines for loyalty rather than rebellion," Rhaegar replied. "We send timber, wool, smoked fish. Let small folk see the crown's generosity to the Watch, and honor, not a chain." Arthur nodded approval, though concern lingered behind his violet eyes. Now Duskendale, grim. A shipment of Reach grain was waylaid outside Maidenpool. Sigils on the slaughtered escorts suggest ironborn reavers, yet survivors claim the attackers wore lion-red cloaks. "Bitter." "Tywin again," Rhaegar murmured. Varys tilted his head. "Or those who hope we blame him." Still, Lord Tywin sharpens blades faster than lambs bleat. "His birds tell me he summons hosts at Oxcross under the pretext of guarding trade routes." Rhaegar massaged the bridge of his nose. "He tests me. He wants the realm to see a regent weakened by endless compromise. We cannot answer his stealth with open war, yet we must answer." Arthur laid a gauntleted hand on the parchment. "Let me ride with 100 knights to Maidenpool. We'll track these raiders and hang them for bandits, lion or kraken." "No," said Rhaegar. "If we brandish light of the West Steel on Crownland soil, Tywin might claim provocation. I will send Lord John Connington. He knows the bay paths and owes me dearly for past absolution. He'll act swiftly with Riverland levies. Varys' smile widened minutely, a move both firm and deniable. Lord Tywin will grind his teeth in silence. They discussed details, rations, ravens, contingencies, until candles shrank to stubs. When Arthur finally excused himself to drill dawn sentries, and Varys dissolved into some hidden lattice of passageways, Rhaegar abandoned the harp and walked to the terrace. Below, torches along the mud gate mirrored stars fallen into orderly lines, while beyond the bay a sliver of orange hinted at sunrise. Footsteps approached, light, measured. He turned as Elia stepped into moonlight, cloak drawn close. "I thought I'd find you here," she said softly. Silver motes dusted her cheeks. Dew or tears, he could not be sure. "You should sleep," he murmured. "I tried. Aeon wakes whenever bells toll, even faint ones from the sept spires." She smiled, though exhaustion pinched the corners. "And Lyanna?" "Well, the babe kicks like a Dornish colt. She scarcely rests at all." Rhaegar's chest tightened. "I worry she traveled too late in her term. Maester Crescent assures us the babe thrives. He says strong kicks mean strong lungs." Elia reached for Rhaegar's hand. "But I didn't climb 3 flights of stairs to discuss midwifery. Arthur told me the news of Duskendale. Tywin grows bold. A lion tests every fence. If rails hold, he paces. If they crack, he pounces." Then there were. She brushed a fingertip along a strand of his silver hair. "Perhaps it is time to trim his claws." Rhaegar gazed past her at the still dark rooftops. "If we cut too deeply, we bleed the whole realm. Better to give him a jeweled gauntlet, something to occupy pride while we fortify peace." And what jewel would suffice for his pride? Power? Dull. But a measured slice. "I'm considering a new office. Warden of the South, bridging Dornish marches and reach to mirror the North's warden. Offer it to Tywin's grandson, should Cersei wed into southern lines. Tywin wins prestige yet far from King's Landing. Mr. Stan." Elia tilted her head. "Tywin will suspect bait. Let him. Paranoia consumes as surely as wildfire." She smiled faintly, then sobered. "In Dorne we say a man juggling vipers must wear gloves of steel, else he ends without fingers. Be sure your gloves are forged." Rhaegar kissed her knuckles. "With you and Lyanna, I shall manage. 2 queens are stronger than 1,000 mailed fists." Her shoulders eased, the worry lines drifted, though never entirely. "Come," she whispered. "Sleep before dawn steals scents from both our tongues." He followed, and for a time candles dimmed behind shuttered doors, and the realm let its regent dream an hour before new burdens roused him. Dreamless rest seldom lasts under duty's lash. Trumpets shrilled at sunrise, not alarm but declaration. Eddard Stark and his Northmen would depart on the morrow, seeking winter roads before first snows choked the neck. Rhaegar, hair still damp from a hasty wash, hurried to the practice yard, where Stark oversaw a final spar. Grey wind gusted, rattling banners. Stark's men labored against Kingsguard pairs, friendly but fierce, each clash a syllable in the language of respect. Rhaegar halted at the fence, catching the hum of steel, the grunt of men measuring strength, and seeing peace forged muscle by muscle. When swords lowered, he waved Ned over. Stark approached, sweat darkening linen, snow-gray eyes keen. "You wish to speak, your grace?" "Only to thank you. Your fellowship these weeks steadied more hearts than you know." Ned wiped his brow with a leather cuff. "If hearts steadied, it's because they saw justice. Too rare a sight." He paused, gaze wandering to where Lyanna watched from a balcony, hand on rounded belly, Elia beside her. "My sister is happy," he added quietly. "I never thought to say that under a dragon's roof. She makes it her own. Both of them do." Rhaegar hesitated. "I would send riders with you part way. Supplies for the long King's Road." "We will accept gladly," Ned said, though politeness tempered eagerness. "Yet I wonder. Rumor claims bannermen at White Harbor raise new levy. They fear Ironborn raids." "I have heard," Rhaegar admitted. "House Greyjoy tests our watchfulness. I've ordered galleys to Sea Dragon Point. But if your bannermen march, use the river grain I pledge to sustain them. No farmer should starve for vigilance. Nepistay. Ned's nod carried the weight of stone agreements. Then I leave in peace. He offered a gauntleted hand. Rhaegar clasped it. Two hearts that once preluded war now beating for wary concord. They parted just as the sun crested battlements, and the light spilled onto the yard like yolk from a fresh egg. Promise, fragile but nourishing. That night, a midsummer feast honored Stark's departure. Benches brimmed with hearty stews, barley bread, honeyed goat, Dornish reds and arbor golds. Music soared, harpists and flutists playing merry reels seldom heard since before the rebellion. Thrice, Rhaegar almost lifted his own harp to join, but diplomacy demanded he circulate, toasting charred victory, and yet brighter, tomorrow. At the high table, Elia conversed with Jon Arryn about fosterage reforms, while Lyanna laughed with Oberyn Martell, who had arrived unannounced from Sunspear bearing a chest of greenfire limes. Rhaegar watched the sand snake princeling tease Lyanna about northern stoicism, until the wolf in her eyes flashed challenge, and they made private wager on foot race once her belly rested. He marveled at how swiftly walls melted when people shared bread, salt, and irreverent jest. Wine flowed. Tyrell envoys danced with Riverland maids. Even dour Northmen clapped calloused hands upon tables in time with Dornish timbres. For a moment, an instant carved of gilded wood and candle wax. The Seven Kingdoms resembled a tapestry, rather than fractured threads. Only Tywin Lannister remained aloof. He rose after the second course and approached the dais. Conversation stilled, like wind abruptly hushed. Tywin nodded to Elia and Lyanna, a gesture precise as a scalpel, then addressed Rhaegar. "Your Grace," he began, voice smooth, "the West pledges its swords to any endeavor you deem worthy. Yet swords idle rust. I propose a single stroke to secure coastlines and coin alike. Grant me royal writ to pacify the Iron Islands. Their reavers menaced grain convoys. A swift campaign ends threat before winter." Murmurs rippled. Some lords nodded, eager for Greyjoy chastisement. Others eyed Tywin warily, remembering how swiftly justice can mutate into conquest beneath lion banners. Rhaegar rose. "I share your concern, Lord Tywin, but a campaign risks bleeding coffers we need for roads and orphans. Instead, I dispatch diplomat envoys to Pike, presenting terms. Hostage fostering, trade tariffs, and pledge of non-raiding. Lord Balon values commerce above plunder these days." "Until plunder profits more," Tywin cut in. "Ironborn, respect only iron." His gaze pierced, golden green. Hesitation invites bloodshed on softer shores. Rhaegar kept voice calm though room tensed. "A king who burns villages to preempt fear is but another reaver. Let negotiation attempt peace. If rejected, we speak of swords." He lifted a goblet. "For now, let this evening taste of hope." Tywin inclined head. "Hope, then?" Yet his eyes whispered war. He returned to his seat, leaving conversation chilled. Rhaegar sensed doubts kindling among guests. Was their regent too gentle? He signaled musicians to strike a bold march, and laughter slowly thawed the room. But undercurrents remained. Later, as dishes cleared, and revelers spun across polished stone, Lyanna beckoned Rhaegar aside. "I fear the lion's paw," she murmured, one hand protective over belly. "He circles like a cat around a cradle. He underestimates how fiercely wolves and dragons guard that cradle," Rhaegar said, though he kissed her knuckles with more resolve than cheer. On Ned's host marched out the mudgate amid mist. Lyanna stood upon the parapet, fur over shoulders, tears glistening unshed, as she waved a kerchief embroidered with pale blue forget-me-nots. Ned looked back thrice, raising two gloved fingers in silent vow. Then the columns vanished into lowland fog. Thus began an autumn of uneasy stillness, an interval when storms brewed but had not yet broken. Like thunderheads massing beyond horizon lines, Rhaegar threw himself into governance. He convened assemblies of craftsmasters, oversaw levee dredging at Maidenpool, reopened the Dragon Pit's vaults to shelter refugees whose cottages wildfire had consumed. He penned charters establishing the Crown's Road Corps, paying small folk to repair highways in lieu of taxes, a scheme borrowed from SOC city-states. For a time his quills flew as vigorously as swords had during war. Elia presided over a queen's court of healing. She established milk kitchens for orphaned children, coaxed septas to teach letters to washerwomen, and recruited maesters to treat summer flux plaguing flea-bottom. Lyanna, though heavy with child, refused idle luxury. She rode into the Kingswood weekly, commanding huntsmen to cull wolves preying on pilgrim carts, then insisted the pelts be sewn into blankets for roadside septs. City wives began copying her riding skirts, split for astride seating, startling the more corseted nobles. Between their courts grew an unlikely friendship. Elia taught Lyanna the finer points of Myrish embroidery. Lyanna coached Elia in archery, though the fragile princess could rarely draw full poundage. One afternoon, Rhaegar found them seated on a garden bench, Lyanna teaching Elia a northern lullaby about snowdrop sprites. Elia harmonized with a Dorn cradle croon. Their laughter wove like twin rivers joining. Proof, Rhaegar felt, that prophecy's harsh geometry could yield gentle curves. Yet, peace seldom runs unbroken. 2 moons past Ned's departure, ravens arrived from Pike. Lord Balon agreed to parley. Then same night, another raven screamed that ironborn longships torched 3 coastal hamlets near Seaguard, carrying captives into fog-shrouded seas. Balon disavowed knowledge. Lords Manderley and Mallister demanded reprisal. Tywin's ears surely pricked, but he bided, nursing some deeper design. Rhaegar called council. Present were Pycelle, Varys, Arthur, Chelstead, and the newly arrived Prince Oberyn, whose wry commentary sliced tension like Dornish steel. They debated half a night. Pycelle advised caution. Chelstead urged immediate fleet muster. Oberyn proposed sending a captain, known for cunning, to sow discord among captains at Pike. Rhaegar closed debate with a compromise. Dispatch Sir Davos Seaworth, former smuggler knighted by Stannis, to negotiate prisoner release with Balon. Meanwhile, build galleys under Lord Redwine's command, but anchor them at Fair Isle rather than striking. Leverage and threat in equal measure. The council broke near dawn. Varys lingered, offering quiet counsel. Aim, Lord Regent, lions hunt from shadows. They need not roar when others bleed for them. Keep watch on Casterly Rock. Tywin may let Ironborn ignite tinder, then swoop as savior, staking claim on Grateful Coast. Rhaegar nodded grimly. Then we must douse the spark before lion's claws find harvest. Winter's first pale breath brushed King's Landing in mid-moon turn. Thin frost spidered across rooftop tiles, breath plumed ghostly in dawn markets. Elia clutched a shawl about her slender shoulders, while Lyanna joked that northern babes kicked harder in cold to stake territory. The castle's physicians predicted she would birth nigh the new year. On the eve of Maidenfall Feast, festival of autumn's end, crisis struck. A pyromancer's apprentice slipped through tavern chatter to whisper Arthur's name. Taken to the White Sword Tower, he confessed. Older brethren plotted to ignite remaining wildfire caches should the regent forsake the true dragon, meaning Aerys. They revered the Mad King as fire made flesh. Rhaegar's house cleanings had pushed them underground but not uprooted. They meant to detonate on Maidenfall night, when city streets overflowed with dancers swirling ribbons near oil-lit braseros. A perfect pyre. Arthur held the boy by shoulders, noting fear sweating down his temples. Why betray your order? The boy stammered. I saw the Queen's children in the yard. They laughed. I thought of my brothers. They'd burn too. Rhaegar ordered immediate search. Dane led gold cloaks into labyrinth cellars, clattering through soot-choked tunnels. They unearthed 3 barrels under the Great Sept's reliquary, 6 more beneath Fleabottom's wine cellars, and, chillingly, 2 sealed deep beneath the Queen's garden pond, reachable by forgotten sewer grates. As each jar surfaced, tension twisted. The conspirators, 5 pyromancers cloaked in red, barricaded themselves inside the alchemist's guild hall. They threatened to ignite the entire store, more than 200 jars, if Crown did not free Aerys and restore Wildfire Commission. Smoke already seeped from windows. Faced with a new dance of fire, Rhaegar summoned Tywin, Chelstead, Varys, and Arthur to the river courtyard. Rain blew sideways, extinguishing torches and drenching cloaks. Above, green flickers ghosted behind Guildhall shutters like baleful eyes. Tywin wasted no breath. Storm the hall. Kill every conspirator before they strike flint. Storming sparks misthrown torches, Chelstead warned. Better parley. Varys suggested negotiation through walls of lead piping. Spirits of naphtha could be flooded to snuff flames. Arthur favored infiltration via roof tiles, using Kingsguard agility. But risk still soared. Rhaegar inhaled damp air. None inside may die as martyrs. We must diffuse, not inflame. He turned to Tywin. I require your engineers' siege pumps, ones used at Wendwater flood diversion. Tywin's brows lifted. To douse with river water, might seep into jars, worsen reaction. We won't douse. Rhaegar motioned to Chelstead. We pump smoke. Oak chip smoke heavy with soporific herbs. It will choke flame, dull senses. While they cough, Arthur and his men slip through skylights, bind them. No. Engineers raced. Carts rumbled through mud hauling bellows, tar cauldrons, bundles of herbs from Maester Labs, henbane, poppy stems, sweetroot d'oreiller. They burned mixture in iron furnaces. Pumps funneled smoke through copper tubes hammered beneath the Guildhall's shutter cracks. Green flicker dimmed, replaced by sputtered candlelight. Inside, coughing erupted. Then Arthur and 2 Kingsguard climbed grappling lines, disappeared through roof vents. Minutes stretched like molten glass. Rain hissed off marble statues. Then a white cloak waved from a casement. Success. Doors swung open. Smoke billowed, revealing pyromancers collapsed in stupor, wrists bound. Wildfire jars remained sealed. A collective breath eased. Rhaegar clasped Arthur's forearm. How many jars remain in city? Chelstead produced a ledger. 207, including 30 sealed for warship catapult use. Remove all, Rhaegar decreed. Transport by barge to Dragonstone's ocean caverns, under quadruple guard. Only release upon Regent's personal seal. He faced Tywin. Someone financed these conspirators. Investigate as Warden of the West. You claim Ironborn chores, but start here. Prove your loyalty. D. A flicker of admiration, or frustration, crossed the lion's eyes. My honor will shine brighter than pyromancer's treachery. He strode off. Crimson cloak blooming. Rhaegar watched him go, half expecting claws concealed in courtesy. Yet Tywin obeyed, lending scribes, unlocking Westbourne ledgers. By Winter's Bite the conspirators confessed under Maester potions. A hidden benefactor had funded them, using code Manticore. He delivered coins through associate banks, names masked. Varys traced shipments to Karth, then Kuhor. Beyond that, dead ends. Snowflakes arrived midnight on Solstice Eve, drifting delicate upon palm leaves imported for the palace conservatory. Southron squealed. Many had never seen true snow. Children raced across courts to catch flakes on tongues before they melted. In the grand hall, fire roared, and minstrels sang of Azor Ahai's forging, not with doom, but with dawn. Elia and Lyanna reclined on pillowed couches, their chairs placed beside hearth. Lyanna's belly seemed ready to burst. Elia's slender hand rested atop it, feeling kicks. Rhaegar sat cross-legged on a rug, harp in lap, strumming a lullaby both queens had taught him, melding northern snow sprite tune with Dornish night wind hum. Halfway through, Lyanna gasped. Water trickled onto cushions. Elia's eyes widened. It begins. Maids scattered. Maester Cresson arrived with birthing women from Storm's End, Robert's gift, ironically. Who carried rose water and linen? They moved Lyanna to a birthing chamber, stoked braziers, ordered boiled cloths. Rhaegar followed the threshold, but Elia barred him gently. Dragon princes pace outside, yes? Trust women's magic. He kissed Lyanna's damp brow, then retreated, heart hammering like siege drums. Hours dragged. He paced corridors, met Arthur for silent prayer at sept doors, consulted Pasel thrice for updates. Cries echoed, then quieted. At dawn's blush, Elia emerged, hair plastered, eyes shimmering. In her arms lay a red-faced infant swaddled in direwolf gray and dragon-red cloth. "A boy," she whispered. "Strong lungs," he announced himself to the sunrise. She relinquished him to Rhaegar's trembling arms. The child's eyes blinked, irises deep violet streaked with tempest gray. Tiny fingers curled around Rhaegar's thumb, warm, insistent. Tears blurred the regent's vision. Behind Elia, Lyanna leaned on Maid's shoulder, pale but radiant. "He demanded a Dawn name," she said hoarsely. "So, give him one." Rhaegar found breath. "Aemon, for the Maester Knight who served on the wall, and for the prophecy of Prince Promised." Lyanna nodded. Elia smiled soft. In the cradle of their joined gaze, an age of enmity fell away. They carried Prince Aemon to the solar balcony. Snowflakes danced around them as if drawn to new warmth. Below, in the courtyard, Northmen and Dornishmen alike cheered. Bards seized lutes to compose ballads before first diaper changed. Rhaegar raised his son toward pale sun, and for a fleeting heartbeat felt prophecy's shadow recede, replaced by the bright tangible weight of life newly forged. Around him, the realm might still simmer. Ironborn raids, lion machinations, manticore plots. But inside that circle of queens and snow he heard only one sound. The steady, unbreakable pulse of dawn. Spring crept earlier than usual, coaxed by unusual warmth. Or perhaps Arthur joked, dragons warmed the wind. Flea bottoms frozen puddles, thawed to muddy laughter, and barges laden with wheat from Arbor returned busy docks to clamor. The court prepared for Prince Aemon's naming ceremony at the Great Septidiawa. Invites spread across kingdoms. Ned, still fortifying Moat Cailin, sent raven promising return. Come blossom bloom. Lord Balin, Kagi, sent polite declination but offered whale oil casks as gift. Stannis wrote from Dragonstone, praising Rhaegar's regard for Night's Watch. Scraps of rumor suggested Robert drilled recruits with fervor, forging rough fishermen into disciplined shields. Less comforting, Tywin remained in capital, claiming oversight of West grain convoys. He shadowed every council, questioned every coin dispersal, nodded seldom, smiled never. Yet he found no purchase to undermine. Then, one crisp morn, a battered maester rode hard through Lion Gate, carrying a satchel sealed with the Manticore's sigil. He collapsed before the White Sword Tower steps, dying of crossbow wound reopened on rough ride. Arthur bore him inside. Pycelle opened satchel. Inside lay shards of golden lion figurine, jaw mangled by black stone venom tipped on edges, and a parchment. The mask cracks. Beware the third head. No signature, only smudge of green wax like wildfire. Council assembled that day. Rhaegar, Elia nursing Aemon upon arrival, refusing to miss. Lyanna, Arthur, Varys, Chelstead, Oberyn, and Tywin invited pointedly. They studied shards. Tywin denied knowledge, though some present eyed him askance. Varys suggested associate assassins known as Sorrowers used manticore poison. Oberyn confirmed with grim nod. He had once dueled one in Lys. "But who hires them?" asked Chelstead. Varys folded pale hands. "Someone who knows Red Keep corridors intimately. Manticore's sign could be misdirection, or truth." Rhaegar scanned faces. Loyal knights, canny spider, proud lion, fiery viper. He glimpsed no guilt. Yet duplicity hides behind loyalty's mask. He stood. "We cannot war on unknown shadows. We root them out with light. From this hour forward, each council clerk keeps 2 ledgers, one open, one sealed. We cross-review fortnightly. All wildfire inventories move to Dragonstone by week's end under Kingsguard escort. And we establish a new order. The Night Lamp. In honor of wall torches, guiding lost brothers. Eyes and ears pledged only to realm, not crown. Ser Oswell will command." "Nine-0." Tywin raised a brow, perhaps impressed by initiative, perhaps calculating infiltration. Oberyn grinned, relishing stir. Elia squeezed Aemon gently. The infant gurgled, oblivious witness to politics reshaping. Council closed. Snow melted in gutters, releasing scent of wet stone. Rhaegar dismissed Arthur to train Night Lamp recruits. young knights from every region, chosen for families with no entangling ambitions. He tasked Varys to identify seditious whispers. He personally walked vaults, verifying wildfire jar counts. Thus, the castle pulsed with vigilance. Yet even vigilance can lull. On the eve of Aemon's naming, as bells rehearsed chimes, disaster stalked again. In the queen's wood-paneled nursery, Elia cradled Aemon while Lyanna hummed a lullaby. Candle flames danced in glass sconces. Suddenly, the moonlight flared emerald through window lattice. A blast rattled panes, distant screams rose. Guards sprinted outside. Elia pressed the baby close, as Lyanna opened door. Arthur appeared, sword drawn. "Explosion at dockside granary," he said, voice level. Wildfire jar hidden in barley shipment. He peered at Aemon, relief softening his eyes. "You must move to Maker's holdfast until we sweep entire wharf." Rhaegar arrived breathless. He took in scene, cracked window, waft of smoke, Elia's pale composure. "This ends tonight," he hissed. He turned to Arthur. "Close every gate. No one enters or leaves until we find the third head." Within hours, gold cloaks sealed alleys. Kingsguard combed warehouses. Night lamp recruits fanned street markets. One found a scrap of parchment behind the granary. A cipher letter containing phrase, "Cinders rain when dragon sleeps." It bore faint scent of blackberry, a perfume Tywin's scribe favored. Coincidence? Or plant? Rhaegar confronted Tywin in the Tower of the Hand. Rain-hammered roof, thunder scrawled lightning glyphs. Tywin stood over maps, unperturbed. "Your Grace," he greeted, "no bow this time." "I trust no harm reached Prince." "Granary burned, dozens died," Rhaegar growled. "Wildfire jars you pledged to secure keep resurfacing." "Explain." Tywin folded arms. "Lion warehouse managers check every crate. My men found none missing." He approached, voice low. "You suspect me. Yet who profits if the lion falls under your sword? Those who cannot challenge you openly. The Reach perhaps, fearing Lion-Dragon alliance. Or Dorne, hoping to keep Lannisters at bay. Even your spider might orchestrate, to maintain indispensability." Rhaegar's hand fell to Blackfire's ruby pommel. "Words can bleed as weapons." "Ay," Tywin said, unflinching. "But I do not wound lightly. I build walls. Around family. Around realm. I offered my walls. You chose reeds of negotiation. Seek your villain among those who fear sturdy stone." Nassim Toir. He turned away, leaving Rhaegar to weigh either Lion's arrogance or innocence. Next dawn, night lamp trackers discovered footprints. Small bear, leading from granary cellar to an abandoned sept, where orphan children sheltered. Inside hid a girl, perhaps 12, soot-smudged, clutching a jar stopper. She sobbed that a kindly wizard with green eyes had given her coin-to-place jar, so folk could watch fireworks. Descriptions pointed to a gaunt man missing 2 fingers. No face known at court. The trail cold, but pattern clear. Wildfire sabotage, manticore threats, framing of great houses. Someone wove chaos to topple trust. Rhaegar convened emergency council, but before all gathered, Varys arrived with new parchment. Coded ledgers from Associ banks had been cracked by his whisperers. The beneficiary behind Manticore accounts traced not to Casterly Rock or Highgarden, but to Braavos holdings historically tied to the Iron Bank. More specifically, to a secret trust once belonging to Prince Viserys Targaryen. Viserys, exiled to Dragonstone months before. Unused to command, jealous of brothers' acclaim. Could he have schemed? The sums diverted after his recall from Storm's End, funneled through Braavos to unknown agents. Motive: reclaim rightful succession, stolen by bastard child of Wolf Princess. As Viserys had raged in letters. Rhaegar's blood chilled. He remembered Viserys at Storm's End, furious over garrison defiance, his silver hair blowing like embers. The idea he might collude with pyromancers, easy. Viserys had studied basic alchemy out of fascination. Rhaegar summoned Arthur. Take discreet squad. Sail to Dragonstone tonight. If my brother plots betrayal, bring him alive." Arthur bowed, though sorrow clouded features. That night, as court attended vigil and sept for the granary dead, Rhaegar stood alone atop Aegon's high hill. Wind-whipped cloak. Below, Blackwater Bay glimmered with torchlit patrol craft. The realm he sought to mend unraveled, bonds fraying from within. He feared prophecies, 3 heads, was curse rather than hope. First Aerys's madness, second wildfire martyrs, third perhaps his own brother turned murderer. Amid that bleak reflection, footsteps approached. Lyanna, hair unbound, robe billowing. She pressed a hand to his chest. "When storms drown stars, we light hearths," she said. "Come home." He allowed her to lead him back through archways glazed with candle glow. Elia waited near the nursery, Aemon asleep in cradle of weirwood and black oak. Together, the 2 queens eased Rhaegar onto cushioned seat. They placed Aemon in his arms. Tiny fingers curled again, pulse strong. Rhaegar felt warmth push back doubts. "We defend this," Elia whispered. "Nothing else matters," Lyanna finished. He kissed the child's brow, then each queen's hand. Resolve renewed, he called for ink and parchment. By morning light, ravens winged to every lord, announcing formation of a council of regents inclusive of each great house heir. Balance power to quell suspicion. He named Mace Tyrell and Doran Martell as financial and diplomatic stewards, offering them authority to check lion pride. He decreed viseries to appear before council within 10 days under threat of attainder. And he promised, should sabotage continue, to share wildfire formula with maesters, removing alchemist monopoly and defanging zealots. Word flew, stirring responses across the realm. Many welcomed shared rule. Some scoffed. But a tide of letters arrived pledging grain, galleys, guard levies. Even Lord Balon, perhaps fearing united front, submitted hostages. His sons Theon and Marin to foster at King's Landing and Old Town. 10 nights later, Arthur's ship returned in fog-shrouded dawn. Ramp lowered. Arthur strode forth, gaunt face betrayed by pained eyes. Behind him, chained yet regal in tattered cloak, walked Viserys. Silver hair tangled, but chin high. In the throne room, Aerys absent in tower cell, Viserys faced council. He denied sabotage, claimed funds intended to hire Golden Company for true conquest of stepstones. Yet, books proved otherwise. He spat accusations. "You sully Valyrian blood with wolf whelp. You shame mother's line. Replacing our king father." Rhaegar felt sorrow deeper than anger. Council voted. Viserys condemned to life on Dragonstone under Maester watch. No contact, no more coin. Tywin abstained. Perhaps disappointed scapegoat held no lion shape. Years would pass before realm wholly healed. Ironborn raids dwindled after Davos negotiated prisoner exchange. A council charter returned prosperity to Riverlands. Tywin accepted Warden of the South title for his grandson, wedding young Lannister Scion to Willis Tyrell's daughter, forging reaching feline alliance, but away from capital. Rhaegar's night lamp uncovered wildfire pockets quarterly. Pyromancer Guild dwindled to scholars, bound by oaths, never to sell jars. The Mad King Aerys died peacefully 3 years later. A bottle of dream wine slipped into his hands under maester care. Bells rang not with mourning, but release. Prince Aemon, hair dark silver, toddled along red keep halls chasing his half-sister Rhaenys kitten. When he fell, Elia scooped him. Lyanna soothed him with wolf-skin doll. Rhaegar watched, harp idle nearby, and finally allowed himself music. A melody neither dragon nor wolf nor sun, yet all at once. A song of dawn, not prophecy. Of peace forged in the chill after wildfire threatened to reclaim night. Outside, snow melt filled riverbeds. Small folk planted barley where ashes once lay. They told new stories. Of the prince who kneeled in blood to crown mercy. Of queens who forged sisterhood from rival banners. Of a stag who guarded the realms of men from walls of ice. They spoke of a lion who, grudging, lent claws to build ramparts. Of a snake who danced wars into treaties. of a kingdom where wildfire slept, dragons sang, and wolves learned to dance to harps. And in the hush between seasons, they whispered that if darkness ever crept again from the farthest north or the deepest vault, well, there were 3 heads to face it. One head wielded love, one justice, one unbowed courage, and together they were flame enough to kindle dawns at world's end.